Amor bhatta juga kaha kabiraj. Kaha amor bhatta juga kaha kabiraj. Eka kali kota gela Gora Nataraj. Pashani kutibo mata anali pashibo. Goranga gunera nidhi kota gile pabo. Sab sangira sange jikoilo bilas. Se sangana payakande narotamadas. Se sangana payakande narotamadas. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashta His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashta Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gopal Bhatta Goswami Ki Jai. Anatakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakya Chakshura Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Urpakadahmayam Dadati Svabarantikam Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Taparakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Organatam Vitam Tam Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vashakan Vitamshta Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostuti Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Pri Vansha Kapatu Vyasha Kripa Sindhu Bhivacha Patita Nam Pavnibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Putarishmati Bhakti Vikasa Swami Itinamane Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Putarishmati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Itinamane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Prasharne Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pashyate Adishatarne Vandeshi Rupa Sanatana Raghudu Go Shri Jiva Gopala. What is it? Gopalago. Bhutir Mahadviri Mafpura Vibornir Maya Shitiyed Amushi Purasha Bungti Gunan Shurasha Shurashatmaka Salang Shishta Bhagavan Vasham Sime. So today is the disappearance day of Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis we keep on the altar. He's very prominent, although we don't hear much about him. He's an eternal associate of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He, from an early age, he was born, he lived, I don't know exactly where he was born. He lived in the area of South India. He's from South Indian descent. He lived at Sri Rangam, although Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that, so his father was Venkat Bhatta, and one prominent brother of his was Prabodhananda Saraswati, brother of Venkat Bhatta. And Venkat Bhatta's son was Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that the Brahmanas in the area of Sri Rangam, they don't hold the name Venkat. So probably they're from somewhere else in Tamil Nadu. So, minor point. So, but they lived there, and Lord Chaitanya, he visited Sri Rangam. Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Narahari Chakravarti, and the Bhakti Ratnakar, he says that Lord Chaitanya, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, was given vision of Lord Chaitanya's Nadiya pastimes, Lord Chaitanya's Leela in his youth. He was granted that vision, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even though he was born elsewhere. So he makes the point, Narahari Thakur, he makes the point that although he's eternally related with Lord Chaitanya, he was born elsewhere to facilitate Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So, cutting the story short, Gopal Bhatta Goswami is narrating in Chaitanya Charitamrita that when Lord Chaitanya, he conducted his tour, his preaching tour of South India, he spent 4 months, Chaturmasya, this, I guess now period, or the rainy season in India. Generally, sannyasis, they don't travel, or most people, they don't travel during the rainy season, at least traditionally in India, because it's very difficult to travel. It's very difficult to live, so I hear, even during the rainy season, with the speak of travel. So, and as is traditionally, most people will settle down for those Chaturmasya months. Even in the Bhagavatam, we hear stories like that of great rishis, etc., like that, doing so. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he stayed in Sri Rangam for 4 months. That's narrated there in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela. And he specifically stayed at the house of Venkat Bhatta, whose son at the time, whose son was Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who was also staying there. So that's very significant. Outside of Nadia, Navadvip, and Jagannath Puri, where Lord Chaitanya spent years, he spent the next most time at Sri Rangam for 4 months. Especially during that preaching tour, Lord Chaitanya would go to some place, often for just a day or just a few days. He wouldn't stay very, very long, especially not in a householder's house. It's very rare for him to do so. So, especially, if you look at Puri, he was staying in the Gambhira. At some time, he was staying with, who is that? Kashishwar Pandit? Kashishwar, I don't know his subtitle, but he was staying with him for some time in his house, and then he moved to the Gambhira underneath. So, Lord Chaitanya, he stayed with Venkat Bhatta for 4 months. It's very significant. He got 4 months of his association, Venkat Bhatta, his brothers, and his son Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And famously in Chaitanya Charitamrita, at least for those who read it, they were coming in, they're from Tamil Nadu, so they're Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says they were acharyas of the Sri Sampradaya, Prabodhananda Saraswati, Venkat Bhatta, I forget his other brother, does anybody know offhand? I don't know his name. So, but these 3 brothers, they were acharyas of the Sri Sampradaya. So they're Sri Vaishnavas, they're worshipping Lakshmi Narayan. Some of you have been to Sri Rangam, so you know the mood there is completely different. So Lord Chaitanya, he was staying, and after some time, he told, I'm paraphrasing, because I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but he had a conversation with Venkat Bhatta to the effect that you're worshipping Lakshmi, but Lakshmi Devi, she desires to attain, to enter into the Rasa Leela, to attain the position that is held by the gopis of Vrindavan. And this sort of disturbed Venkat Bhatta's mind, and so there is some back and forth argument, you can say, discussion about that point. And then ultimately, Lord Chaitanya, he established the point that Lakshmi Devi is nothing more than an expansion of Radharani. The ultimate worshipable object, higher than Lakshmi Devi, is Srimati Radharani herself. So he converted them to Gaudiya Vaishnava. Particularly, what came out of that, Prabodhananda Saraswati, who is an acharya within our line. He's very prominent, and he's also Gopal Bhatta Goswami's guru. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, of course, he was there. He got Lord Chaitanya's association. And although we don't hear so much about him in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I'll get to that a little bit more later. But Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he took initiation from Prabodhananda Saraswati, his uncle. And then after some time, he went to, I'm skipping here, because I don't want to read and bore everyone because I can't nicely project it. But for some time, he went to Vrindavan because he had already he was convinced that Lord Chaitanya, he was a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. So he went to Vrindavan, where he met Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and gained their association. There, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he compiled many important works. Two he compiled, although he didn't, he's sort of hidden, I guess you could say. So Sanatana Goswami, he's famous for his Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is like the rules and regulations, Vaishnava Smriti, you can say. So he found the material for that, Sanatana Goswami, but Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he put it together. It was sort of in a rough, you could say he edited it, basically. It was sort of in a rough form. He had the notes for it, Sanatana Goswami. He had like an idea, but Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he practically compiled it. And then in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, there's one verse. This is Hari Bhakti Vilas 1-2. Bhaktir Vilasam Shtinutu Prabodha Nandasya Shishyo Bhagavat Priyasya Gopala Bhatto Raghunatha Dasam Santoshayan Rupa Sanato Cha. Gopal Bhatta, the disciple of Prabodhananda, who is dear to the Lord, has collected these devotional activities to satisfy Raghunath Das and Sanatana Goswamis. So, and then initially, Sanatana Goswami, although now he's known for it, initially Sanatana Goswami, he published the Hari Bhakti Vilas under Gopal Bhatta Goswami's name. Although now Sanatana Goswami has become known for, generally he's associated with that text. Others, prominently, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he authored this Shat Kriya Sara Deepika, which is, similarly, is also Vaishnava Smriti. It contains a bunch of, you could say, rituals, not just rituals, things like samskaras, etc., very important I say rituals, but it's not the sort of like rituals that we condemn when we're speaking on Prabhupada's books or we read Prabhupada's books. There's rituals within the Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is important, just like Garbhadhana Samskara. So you'll find things, these details are given in that book, among other different things I'm not so much conversant with because I haven't read it. But it's a very important book that establishes the authoritativeness of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So, and among other things, although Jiva Goswami is famous for his Shat Sandarbha, probably his most famous work, Jiva Goswami, practically he took up the work of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and he alludes to this in his Sandarbhas as well. I don't have the verse offhand, but I've heard it before. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, practically he did the research and he compiled the notes for the Shat Sandarbha, although it wasn't exactly in an organized form. And then later, Jiva Goswami, with his permission, he sort of organized it and put it together like that. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he did a lot of work putting together Shat Sandarbha. And although we don't read from the Shat Sandarbha, there are many things, a lot of the philosophy that we speak about in the Bhagavatam, that we read about in Srila Prabhupada's books, that we just sort of take for granted, a lot of it comes out of the Shat Sandarbha. It's systematically presented just like, for example, this point that Shankaracharya, he's an incarnation of Lord Shiva, and specifically he didn't commentate upon the Srimad Bhagavatam because he didn't want to touch that, because it describes Krishna's, etc. like this. We've read this in Srila Prabhupada's books. This point, it comes from the Shat Sandarbhas, among so many other different things. I haven't read them, so I don't exactly know. Just for example, there's a whole book Sandarbha dedicated to establishing Krishna as the Supreme Personality of God and giving the evidence for that. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he did the background work, very important background work of doing this. It was a very great, he was a Brahmana, both by birth and by qualification, obviously. He was very learned in the Shastras, although we don't so much hear of him practically among the Goswamis, at least to my knowledge of all the Goswamis, he's sort of the most obscure because he sort of kept himself that way. He didn't want he didn't want naturally for a Vaishnava. He didn't want his name propagated. Specifically, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he requested Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who was then compiling Chaitanya Charitamrita. He told him, please keep my name out of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Therefore, you see all the other five Goswamis, the two Raghunaths. Obviously, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami. Jiva Goswami is also mentioned, although he was a little bit, he was younger, so he's not so prominent, but his name is there. But Gopal Bhatta Goswami, I think his name is mentioned once or maybe twice. And in other places, he's alluded to. So he specifically wanted to keep himself out of the limelight, although now we know his glories, obviously. So, amongst other things, he established the Radha Raman temple in Vrindavan. For those of you who have been, as a very beautiful deity. I'll just gloss over the story. Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he was worshipping a Shalagram Shila. And there's two different stories exactly how it came about, but the common thread in both stories is that from this Shalagram Shila, so Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he desired to worship a full-fledged deity, Murti. So one day, this Shalagram Shila itself manifested, it grew, you could say, into what is now Radha Raman in Vrindavan. And so he made arrangements, I don't exactly know it because I don't have the notes here. He made arrangements for the temple to be built that's now there in Vrindavan, etc. like that. So this is sort of a overview of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. More could be said. I don't know so much more offhand. I was just reading a little bit, but he's a very distinguished acharya within our sampradaya, even though his name isn't so much known, just because he kept himself that way, you know? Even today, because, of course, there's that one book that I was mentioning, Shat Kriya Sar Deepika, but it's not so well known. Generally, Hari Bhaktivilas Shat Sandarbha is a little more known and a little more read amongst devotees. And on those books, you see, you know, the names of Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, etc., like this. But Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he did much work in helping with these two books. So, Echai Gosher Kori Charan Vadan, Jahahoite Bignanash Abhishta Paran, by offering obeisances to Gopal Bhatta Goswami, all the obstacles in our devotional service, they become eliminated. What is that? Echai Gosher Muri Taradash, Tasabara Padarenu More Panchagras. So this Panchagras that's mentioned here, the dust of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, it's our food stuff, basically, Narottam Das Thakur says. So this Panchagras, just a side point, I've always wondered, what does it mean, the 5 kinds of food stuff? But we hear Chatur Vidha Shri Bhagavat Prasad, so what are the Panchagras? So Panchagras, it refers to, I don't know exactly the details, but in demigod worship, rituals of demigod worship, there's 5 types of offerings, or 5 types of prasad, offerings and then prasad, technically, that you get from these rituals, basically like this. So this is what the Panchagras refers to. Instead of the prasad from demigod worship, we're taking the dust of the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis. So interesting point. So I can move on now, with the remaining time I have, to speak on Bhagavatam. If somebody, yeah. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, text number 24. Manye Asuran Bhagavatan Tri Adeshe. Okay. Samrambha Marga Abhinivishta Chitan Ye samyoge achakshata tarkshya putram amse sunabha ayudham apatantam manyesuran bhagavatam triyadishe samrambha marga binivishta chitan ye samyogi chakshata tarkshaputram amse sunabhayudham apatantam manyesuran bhagavatam triyadishe samrambha marga binivishta chitan ye samyogi chakshata tarkshaputram ye samyogi chakshat amse sunabhayudam apatantam manyesuran bhagavatam triyadishe samrambha marga binivishta chitan ye samyogi chakshata tarkshaputram amse sunabhayudham apatantam. Please repeat.
Manyesuran bhagavatam triyadhishe sangrambha marga vinivishta chittam sangyuge chakshata tarkshaputram amse sunabhayudham apatantam
Manyesuran bhagavatam triyadishe sangrambha marga vinivishta chitta sangyuge chakshata tarkshaputram amse sunabhayudham apatantam
Manyesuran bhagavatam stradishe samrambha marga vinivishta chittaya ye samyuge chakshata tarkshaputram amse sunabhayudham apatantam
Mataji's? Manye, I think, Asuran, the demons, Bhagavatan, great devotees, Three Adhishe, unto the Lord of the Threes, Samrambha, enmity, Marga, by the way of, Abhinivishta Chitan, absorbed in thought, Ye, those, Samyoge, in the fight, Achakshata, could see, Tarkshaputram, Garuda, the carrier of the Lord. Amse, on the shoulder. Sunabha, the wheel. Ayudham, one who carries the weapon. Apatantam, coming forward. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. I consider the demons who are inimical towards the Lord to be more than the devotees, because while fighting with the Lord, absorbed in thoughts of enmity, they are able to see the Lord carried on the shoulder of Garuda, the son of Tarksha, Kashyapa, and carrying the wheel weapon in his hand. The Asuras who fought against the Lord face to face got salvation due to their being killed by the Lord. This salvation of the demons is not due to their being devotees of the Lord. It is because of the Lord's causeless mercy. Anyone who is slightly in touch with the Lord, somehow or other, is greatly benefited, even to the point of salvation, due to the excellence of the Lord. He is so kind that He awards salvation even to His enemies, because they come in contact with Him and are indirectly absorbed in Him by their inimical thoughts. Actually, the demons can never be equal to the pure devotees. But Uddhava was thinking in that way because of his feelings of separation. He was thinking that at the last stage of his life, he might not be able to see the Lord face to face as did the demons. The fact is that the devotees who are always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord and transcendental love are rewarded many hundreds and thousands of times more than the demons by being elevated to the spiritual planets, where they remain with the Lord in eternal, blissful existence. The demons and impersonalists are awarded the facility of merging into the Brahmajyoti effulgence of the Lord, whereas the devotees are admitted into the spiritual planets. For comparison, one can just imagine the difference between floating in space and residing on one of the planets in the sky. The pleasure of the living entities on the planets is greater than those who have no body and who merge with the molecules of the sun's rays. The impersonalists, therefore, are no more favored than the enemies of the Lord. Rather, they are both on the same level of spiritual salvation. So, a few points. So, obviously, Srila Prabhupada has made this point in his purport, we literally just read. Uddhava was thinking in this way out of his feelings of separation, although it's not factual. Narada Muni, a similar point comes up in what's been quoted quite often recently. The 7th Canto, Chapter 1, the Supreme Lord is equal to all. So Narada Muni, he makes a similar point that he also says that he considers the demons more fortunate out of his own humility, because they're able to be so intensely absorbed in thought of Krishna, out of anger, out of envy, etc. like this, whereas he's thinking himself not his own absorption not to be so intense. But Narada Muni, he gives that's his own humility. He gives a philosophically correct, not that that's incorrect, but he gives a philosophical explanation later. He says, in his opinion, by devotional service, one cannot achieve such intense absorption and thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as one can through enmity towards Him. That is my opinion. He's speaking this out of his humility, Narada Muni, but Srila Prabhupada comments in the purport that one should render, as explains the point about Rupa Goswami, as I gave in the last class I gave, that one should render favorable devotional service to Lord Krishna. Because if as Prabhupada is making the point here, if the demons, and I think the point is made in Bhagavatam, I think Kalki Prabhupada was reading, if the demons attain such a position, what to speak of the devotees who worship the Supreme Lord and loving devotional service, what it can be said of their position. So I kind of spoke this purport. A lot of the points or a few points are similar to the last class I gave, so I won't go over the same. Just one thing I thought to mention is that the demons and impersonalists are awarded the facility of merging into the Brahmajyoti effulgence of the Lord and personal liberation. So previously I was speaking about impersonal liberation. So Putana didn't get impersonal liberation, nor did Aghasura, nor did Shishupal, nor did Dantavakra. The other demons we don't quite know because it's not specifically mentioned. Keshi, for example, is just said Krishna killed him. Of course, we know he got liberation because that's Krishna is the quality of Krishna that he gives liberation to demons, but we don't know exactly what sort of liberation. So it's not that all demons that are killed by Krishna get a personal sort of liberation. As Srila Prabhupada is writing here, the demons Some demons, we understand that or here he says that demons merged into the Brahmajyoti effulgence. Some demons, if Krishna is especially merciful, he'll give them personal liberation, but it is not a sort of, as to what demons get personal liberation, what demons get impersonal liberation is not exact. It's up to Krishna to decide. It's based upon his mercy. He gave Putana personal liberation because he took the better side of what Putana was trying to give. You could say he took Putana, who approached Krishna, as we heard, as a mother, of course, with the intent to kill Krishna, but Krishna took the positive side, thinking that the Putana has come to feed me with her breast milk. She took that as a nurse, basically. He took that side of her character, and because of that, he was showing appreciation. So he like that. So for others, he may do so, he may not do so. It depends. It's up to Krishna. So it's not a mechanical thing. That's one point. Another point Srila Prabhupada makes, that the personalists, they get the same destination as the demons, to give you an idea of the position that the impersonalists are at. Obviously, there's the famous verse, Yene Ravindaksh Vimoktamani Nastvayasta Bhava Avishuddha Buddhayaha. What is that? Yene Avishuddha Buddhayaha. What is that? Anybody know? I'm like freezing. Aruhya Krishna Parampadam Tataf Patentyado Nadri Yushmad Angriyaha. Because they neglect Yushmad Angriyaha, the lotus feet of Krishna, then personalists, they fall down for the position of imagined so-called liberation. Presumably, we can say the demons too. Well, the demons specifically, it's possible to come out of the Brahman effulgence and elevate higher, go higher in your liberation, as some people do. Some liberated souls do, but specifically, so the demons may do so, but specifically for the impersonalists, we hear that they fall down from their position because they don't have a higher conception. They're specifically looking to attain that. The demons, though, they're not specifically looking to attain liberation or anything like that. They're at least the ones that were trying to kill Krishna, their goal was to kill Krishna. They didn't have any sort of, at least in that moment, any sort of like any more philosophical thought as to what they're doing. But then impersonalists, they fall down for this position of liberation. Specifically, it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Although nonetheless, they attain to the same destination. So emerging into the Brahmajyoti effulgence is not such, although to us, I guess for a conditioned soul, it looks like something very, very, very wonderful. It's actually not a very desirable destination. It's a desirable destination. Devotees don't accept this sort of liberation. If necessary for their service, they will accept one of the other four types of liberation, Salokya, Samipya, etc., getting a form like Krishna, form like the Lord, or Vishnu, any form of the Lord, residing on the same planet as the Lord, etc. They'll accept these sorts of liberations, but devotees think that merging into the effulgence of the Lord, merging into impersonal Brahman, to be hellish, actually. I think... I don't know, I forget. Is it Prabodhananda or who wrote? No, it was Prabhupada Thakur, one of the two, I forget. He has a verse like that. So, among other points I want to make, the main point I wanted to bring out of this purport was because it was being discussed recently. This, let's see. Actually, so I guess the overall thing, what is that? That Uddhava, so he was thinking in that way because of his feelings of separation. He was thinking that at the last stage of his life, he might not be able to see the Lord face to face as the demons. Obviously, he was able to do so. Although one point is Krishna left the planet before Uddhava. Seemingly, he wound up his pastimes before Uddhava. That doesn't necessarily mean that Uddhava didn't see the Lord face to face. Uddhava is always Krishna conscious, eternally so. He's Nitya Siddha. He was never forgetful of Krishna. So undoubtedly, he was able to see Krishna face to face, some form or another, before he left this planet. He returned to the Lord Krishna's eternal abode like that, or moved on to another universe to continue the Leela there, the transcendental roadshow. So, but he was thinking like this out of his humility. I read something recently, because this point came up recently, and in a little different context. The exact point was a little bit different, that the devotees... it's almost a contradiction. If you follow devotional service, according to Shastra, if you act with body, mind, and words in the service of Krishna, your jivan muktya sa uchyate. You're a liberated soul even in this life. But a devotee never thinks himself to be a liberated soul. For a devotee, liberation is guaranteed, but a devotee never thinks he's going to be liberated. A devotee thinks he'll have to take birth and birth and birth. He thinks, I may reside in the material world eternally, almost so. He doesn't even consider that he will be able to go back to Godhead. It's contradictory, actually. We preach to people that you come, you're suffering birth, death, disease, and old age, and then when they come in, we teach them that you should never think, or at least never think that you've become liberated from birth, death, disease, and old age. It's a little strange, a little bit. This point was brought up in a different way to Srila Prabhupada. Satsvarup Das Goswami, he asked Srila Prabhupada, can we go back to Godhead in his life? Yes, why not? Srila Prabhupada replied to him. But one has to be free of all material desires, Satsvarup Das Goswami said. Prabhupada said, well, Krishna consciousness means no material desires. So if you're Krishna conscious, you have no material desires. Otherwise, if you have material desires, you're not fully Krishna conscious. So then, Maharaj continued that if somebody asked me if he could come back to Godhead in one life, I would say yes. I would tell that person, yes, you can go back to Godhead in one life, in this life. But if he asked me whether I was going back to Godhead, I don't know if I could definitely say yes. So Prabhupada, he recognized the problem that Das Goswami was presenting, and immediately he said, no, Prabhupada replied. It's not a question of whether I go or you go, but if anyone takes to Krishna consciousness, he will go back home, back to Godhead. Krishna says, of course, if we are preaching, it's not that we are exporting them by consignment to Godhead, and we are not going. In other words, it's not that the preacher is enlisting everybody else in the world to go back to Godhead, but he himself isn't going to go back to Godhead. What's the point of that? Prabhupada is making this point. It's expected, he said, that the preacher is also going back home, back to Godhead. Although he doesn't expect it, the preacher doesn't necessarily expect it. Although at the same time, we should expect it because so many assurances are there. The whole point of the Krishna consciousness movement, well, you could say there's many different points of the Krishna consciousness movement. One amongst many is to deliver people from the pangs of birth, death, disease, and old age. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in distributing the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he said, take this mantra and you'll be liberated from these things. So it's one of the purposes of the movement to send people back home, back to Godhead. Famously, so we shouldn't, the goal of the movement is fulfilled, one of the goals of the movement is fulfilled when we send people back home, back to Godhead. We see people are going back home, back to Godhead, and us ourselves are going back home, back to Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada implored us, somewhat famously, I guess, don't think that this chanting and dancing will not lead to the desired goal. It will. It is the assurance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that one gets all perfection by this process. So just by this chanting of Hare Krishna, by this dancing, by this feasting, of course there's other things too. We'll go back home, back to Godhead. There's one restriction, Srila Prabhupada said. Of course, there's so many restrictions if we look at it minutely, but the one restriction, chiefly, if you summarize them all into one, we restrict sense gratification. We give up sense gratification. Giving up sense gratification means giving up material desires. In essence, basically, they can be equated. Just if we give up this sense gratification, Srila Prabhupada said, sure, and stick to the rules and regulations, surely we'll go back home, back to God in his life. Srila Prabhupada, he gave so many assurances for this. If you've read Srila Prabhupada's books, aside from one purport in the third canto, where Srila Prabhupada says that one can't expect to go back home, back to God in one life. Other than that, if you take the total corpus of Srila Prabhupada's teachings, in his books, in his conversations, letters, he gave so many assurances that for his disciples who follow, who don't become demigods in the next life and fall down, who follow, they'll surely go back home, back to Godhead. In giving initiation to people, initiation letters, Srila Prabhupada would initiate often by letter, sending beads in the mail, etc. like this. He would, when he gave, sometimes it will go to a temple president, sometimes it will go to an individual. He would, in these letters, specifically to the individuals, you see Srila Prabhupada again and again makes the same points over and over again. In fact, most of the letters, if you look at, say, initiation letter, this is from 1972, it's practically the same letters, this over and over again. Literally the same words. Srila Prabhupada is repeating the same point that, in essence, just summing them up, if you chant 16 rounds a day, follow 4 regular principles, you'll go back home, back to God. Your success is guaranteed. Sometimes you add more things. Sometimes you take away more things. Of course, there's more than that, obviously. Rising for Mangalarti, eating Krishna Prasad. And Srila Prabhupada lists this. Here's some letters I'll just read from. Rise early, attend Mangalarti in class, chant 16 rounds, and follow the 4 regs without deviation. That will guarantee your spiritual success. Another one, please follow the regular principles strictly and chant your rounds of Hare Krishna faithfully. Attend the Arti ceremony, take prasad, and work hard in the service of Krishna. And surely you will experience the bliss of perfection of life in Krishna consciousness. Another, our request to all our students is that they daily chant at least 16 rounds of this Harinam Maha Mantra offenselessly, following the regular principles. Thus, their success will be assured without a doubt. And one last one. Now you must agree to very rigidly follow the rules and regulations, i.e. chanting 16 rounds of beats daily, rising early, and attending Mangalarti, observing the 4 principles, attending the classes, eating only Bhagavat Prasad, as well as working under the instruction of my representatives, such as your GBC representative and temple president. And if you follow this procedure very strictly, then your life will be glorious and you will go back to home, back to Godhead. This I can guarantee. So if you just stick to these basic principles, Srila Prabhupada again and again reiterated, if you just stick to the basic principles, you notice you'll go back home, back to Godhead. Not just that, you'll see a difference even within this very life. It's a practical result. Just like Srila Prabhupada, he would point to his disciples of the efficacy of the process he was giving. That some years ago, most of them were hippies, coming from a hippie background. Some of them, they wouldn't even bathe once a day. Some would bathe once a week. They would eat meat, they would intoxicate, have illicit sex freely. And then, after taking Krishna consciousness, they will give all these things up. They will be very clean, adopt Vaishnava behavior, chanting 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra every single day, following 4 regular principles. For a Westerner to give up illicit sex, meat eating, gambling is easier. Intoxication, which is their very life, as Lord Prabhupada would quote Lord Zetland in response to Prabhupada's godbrother, impossible for Westerners to give up these things. And initially, Prabhupada he was shocked that Westerners could give up these things. When he came to America, if you see, practically Prabhupada didn't really expect people to take up this so much. Although he wrote those 2 poems when he was praying to Krishna, practically he didn't think people would actually take it up. Because innumerable times he related that, that he thought when he gave the 4 regular principles, he thought that Americans would just see it and just say, please go back to India, old man, something like that. And actually, he was going back to the Skinda ticket office at the port of New York. I don't know if it was specifically Skinda, but some boat ticket office for passes by boat back to India, and he was inquiring what is the price. He was thinking about going back, actually. He didn't think people would actually take up the process, but they took up the process. Tadarajas tamo bhava kama lobhatiyashtiye chitta. What is it? Say it loudly. Chiter navidam stitam sattve prasidati. Something like that. I used to know it. So the modes, as Prabhupada also quotes in his song, Markini Bhagavata Dharma, that by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing about Krishna and chanting about Krishna too, the scientific result, Vijnana, is that the modes of passion and tamas, they diminish in one's character. And one comes to the platform of sattva, ultimately to Shuddha sattva, and ultimately they become Krishna conscious. So not just, the guarantee isn't just at the end of life. It's not that we have to wait until, we can see the practical effect of following these things even when they're alive. The more strictly we adhere to the morning program and adhere to what Srila Prabhupada gave, not just morning program, everything, the more we see an effect in our life. Somebody said, I forget who I was hearing, I think it was Giriraj Swami, I think, I don't know, I forget. It was either Guru Raj Swami or Tamakrishna Goswami or Burijan Prabhu, I forget. This was a long time ago. But I was hearing one lecture, and they were making the point that if you miss, they were specifically speaking about morning program. They were saying that if you miss any part, but it can be applied to all of Srila Prabhupada's means, taking Bhagavad Prasad, etc. So to the degree you adhere to it, the degree you benefit. And the degree you miss out on this program, to that degree you suffer. It's just like, they were specifically giving an example. It's just like in eating, you need grains, you need vegetables, you need dairy, milk, you need water, obviously. And if you miss out on one of these things, then you're undernourished, and it can actually be felt. If you stop drinking water, even though you may be eating so much rice, you'll notice. So similarly, if you only drink water and eat vegetables, but you don't eat any grains, because anad bhavanti bhutani, all living entities subside on grains, specifically humans, you will notice. So similarly too, if you miss any parts of the morning program, any part of Srila Prabhupada's package of Krishna consciousness, it'll make an effect in your life. You will notice it, just like in my own instance, I could say, I was just sick like a week ago or so, and I wasn't coming to the morning program. I could see a difference not going to Mangalarti versus going to Mangalarti every single day. Even though I was chanting my rounds, etc., like that. And most of us have, especially when you go home to visit your parents, if you don't follow such, you can tell there's a difference in your consciousness. It's very perceptible, it's very tangible. When you miss out on one aspect of Krishna consciousness, it's very felt in your devotional life. It's very, very acute. So I thought that was a wonderful point. So I heard that they were making that point in that class. So we shouldn't miss out. We should follow the full package that Srila Prabhupada gave. It's very simple, Ultimately, when you boil it down, it's very, very simple. You chant 16 rounds, you follow 4 regular principles, you go to Mangalarti. Anyway, you have to wake up sometime. You just adjust your sleep schedule so you can wake up early. Of course, not everybody is able to do, specifically householders. Grahastha life means compromise with material energy. So you can't fully adhere, at least in the West. For those who are not living on a farm, unfortunately, it means you can't fully adhere. But to that degree we adhere, to that degree we get the benefit. That's the point. So we should adhere as far as we can. Specifically for those living in the temple, we have full facility. We have full facility for going back home, back to Godhead. So yes, continuing with this point, this guarantee. Anyway, I have other quotes here, but they're making the same point. One devotee, he asked Srila Prabhupada, if a devotee just chants 16 rounds and follows the 4 regular principles, will he go back home, back to Godhead? And Srila Prabhupada, he assured him, he said, oh yes, definitely he'll go back home, back to Godhead. Other things, so many different things. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives his assurance, Mam Ivashyasi. Without doubt, you should know this, just like, I don't know the Sanskrit well enough to quote it, in that 1868, I think it is, that one who preaches this message of the Gita amongst the devotees, and also the karmis, Srila Prabhupada gave that understanding, is very dear to me, and at the end, he will come back to me. Of this, there is no doubt. So not only is Srila Prabhupada giving assurance, even Krishna himself gives assurance that one who preaches, he'll go back to me. In Rome, 1974, Srila Prabhupada's visit there, the devotees had, I think, just recently opened the center there. And Srila Prabhupada was so happy with that center, he considered Rome as one of the most important cities in the world. He said that of many cities. But he said that to these devotees who opened that center, Srila Prabhupada was so pleased. He said that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he will personally take you by the hand and take you back home, back to Godhead. So similarly too, in New Vrindavan, at one point, I don't know exactly the year, so there's verse from the Gita I was just quoting. Yaidam paramam gohyam, where'd it go? Paramam gohyam mad bhakti shavidasyati bhakti mai param kritva mami vashyati samshayaha. So it's samshaya, just like some of us know this first chapter. What is that? How does it go? 7:1. I'm blinking. Just hear from me, without doubt, without touch. Mami Maya Saktamanaf Partha Yogam Yunjan Marashaya Asamshana Samagramam. Am I mixing up? So the same thing, asamshaya, without doubts. So Krishna says that without doubt you should know it, that one who preaches, he returns to me. Know this without doubt. So, right. So yes, similarly in New Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada similarly gave assurance, initially to Kirtanananda, then Swami there. He was so pleased with him, he was saying that he's done so nicely here. Kirtanananda, I bless him that he'll go back home, back to Godhead. Yeah. And then he said, why Kirtanananda? And then Srila Prabhupada took his hand like this, just like everybody's sitting here. He took his hand and he said, why Kirtanananda? All of you will go back home, back to Godhead. He blessed, I think that was 1972. I think 72. I don't remember exactly offhand. So Srila Prabhupada blessed all the devotees in New Vrindavan to go back home, back to Godhead. This guarantee, this blessing to go back home, back to Godhead, it extends to those who publish and distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. As we know, there's a whole book of quotes. This is my request, among others. Many books published to that effect of quotes of Srila Prabhupada saying how pleased he is by the distribution of his books and giving assurances like that. Here are just a few. I am so pleased, from letters, I am so pleased upon all the boys and girls in Los Angeles and all of the world who are understanding and appreciating this unique quality of our transcendental literature. And voluntarily, they are going out to distribute despite all circumstances of difficulty. By this effort alone, they are assured to go back to home, back to Godhead. I think that this was after the first Christmas marathon in Los Angeles. Srila Prabhupada wrote this letter because Rameshwara Prabhu, he loves quoting this letter. So, by this effort alone of distributing books, you're guaranteed to go back home, back to God. Srila Prabhupada, he gives his assurance. So similarly, another one, you have taken seriously the publishing and also the distribution of these books, and that is the success of our mission. You have taken seriously this work, and I know that my Guru Maharaj is pleased with you because he wanted this. So, by this endeavor, you will all go back home, back to Godhead. In 1969, Srila Prabhupada was so pleased with the workers at ISKCON Press, who was just starting up. I think it was started in 1968. In 1969, things were getting practically organized then in Boston. He blessed the workers. He's told them, print my books at least one every 2 months, which is very, very difficult. And you'll go back to Godhead. So similarly, during the Chaitanya Charitamrita Marathon, for those who know, of 1975, when the BBT put out, was it 19 volumes? 17 volumes? Something like that? What is it, 19? 17 volumes and 3 of Bhagavatam. So altogether, what is that? 20 volumes overall. So 20 books, basically, not just volumes. We say volumes, but it's like a full-fledged book, you know what I mean? It's like a book that's half the size of this book. It's like a huge book, you know, and then they have paintings, and then it's like a big deal. And they put it out in just the span of, what is that? Do you know offhand? 2 months. Prabhupada is saying in this letter, print 1 book every 2 months, and they put out 20 in 2 months. Of course, that was on Prabhupada's request. And he blessed all those devotees by their effort, because they were doing so. They didn't practically, that was like the most, like, I'm trying to think of a word for it. Most extreme Krishna conscious program you can get on, basically. They were doing the bare necessity. They would go to Mangalarti, chant their rounds, and then people would bring them food, do their laundry, and they would sleep just like minimum. And when one person stopped working, another person will come in and just pick up the work immediately. 24 hours around the clock work was going on in these books. So it was a huge endeavor. Rameshwara Prabhu, he tells this with great enthusiasm. If you haven't heard it, he likes to relate this story. But Srila Prabhupada blessed all those who took part that they will go back home, back to God by this effort, by this effort to print his books. So austerities in printing and distributing books, specifically distributing books, are rewarded. One quote, which we know like roughly, the exact quote, it goes, if you dedicate your whole life to distributing these books, I promise you, you'll go back home, back to Godhead. I mean, the assurance that we know generally, an exact quote is there. So many assurances are there, specifically for those who are distributing the books. There was another letter I don't have here. Srila Prabhupada was saying that People may take, people may not take. People may not even, regarding the books. And he was saying that people may not even take up the Krishna consciousness. But that doesn't matter. If you preach Krishna consciousness, you're guaranteed to go back home, back to Godhead. So you can preach Krishna consciousness your whole life and be completely, superficially, it can be a complete failure. But as your success, because you'll perfect your own Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna is pleased. Srila Prabhupada, he could have come to the West and completely failed. Nobody could have taken Srila Prabhupada seriously. He could have made no disciples. If Srila Prabhupada, he came to the West, he just tried to preach, but he didn't have this spectacular success that he did. That doesn't make Srila Prabhupada's efforts any less glorious in Krishna's eyes. That doesn't mean he's pleased Krishna any less. Of course, Krishna reciprocated with Srila Prabhupada on an unprecedented scale, but it's that effort alone that Srila Prabhupada took to come and preach Krishna consciousness in the West, that in and of itself was Srila Prabhupada's success. Of course, there are external signs of his success that were then later manifest, but my point is that Srila Prabhupada's point here is that one may be successful in preaching Krishna consciousness, one may not be successful. But the act of just preaching alone, it's your success. It will guarantee your entrance back home, back to Godhead. Although Srila Prabhupada was so very pleased with those who distributed his books and those who printed his books, earlier as quoting ISKCON Press, he was not pleased when devotees neglected the principles. In one instance, again in 1969, I think, or 71, I forget exactly, when members at ISKCON Press, a few of them were not following the regular principles so strictly, including they weren't attending the morning program in the name of doing press work. Srila Prabhupada didn't like this, to the point where he was willing to shut down the whole press just so the devotees will again start following the four regular principles to come to the temple program. Pretty severe, you know. Srila Prabhupada is the first press established in the West under Srila Prabhupada, which was then the only medium of printing Srila Prabhupada's books. I think Dai Nipan was doing something earlier than that, but they were trying to be self-sufficient, the devotees. And Srila Prabhupada was ready to shut the whole operation down because the devotees weren't following the principles. We see other instances of that in a much different context, just like the roadshow. Srila Prabhupada shut it down because he wasn't happy with the looseness that was going on there. He was afraid the devotees were not following the principles, among other things. So although Srila Prabhupada was pleased with things, he wasn't pleased with service at the neglect of the basic principles of chanting 16 rounds, following regular principles like that. So these things are the basis of our Krishna consciousness. So at no point should we ever give these things up. Just like I was saying, the thing with the nutrition, even in an event state, we shouldn't give these things up. It's very important. Bhaktivikas Maharaj, he was saying, he told me, just like offhand or something, he himself was coming when, just like we play a tape of Srila Prabhupada on Saturday, he himself was coming to listen to that tape of Srila Prabhupada. I was amazing, you know. And then he told me a little bit later, he said something to the effect of, I'm paraphrasing, like, yeah, I should also be going to Bhagavatam class every single day, but it's just I also have things, but it's like, you know, it's difficult. I have like so many things to do, basically something like that. So he himself is also thinking, you know, I have to go to Bhagavatam class every single day. And Srila Prabhupada in 1975 or 76, I forget, in Vrindavan, after the Krishna Balaram temple had been opened, Srila Prabhupada himself was sitting in the Bhagavatam classes that were being given by his disciples, and he was listening to them. It's amazing, you know. So, of course, the Acharya, they may adjust things a little bit. For example, as has been stated in classes before, Srila Prabhupada didn't necessarily go to Mangal Arati. But he instructed his disciples to. Srila Prabhupada didn't go to Mangal Arati because he was writing these books during that time. So acharyas may adjust things a little bit here and there, but still we see by they themselves, or by their own behavior, they're emphasizing these things. It's very amazing, you know. So my time is running short. Just one other point. So this point that Uddhava is coming up here, still it may be doubtful to think that because we're so fallen, how is it possible for us to go back to home, back to Godhead at the end of this life? How is it possible? Well, one thing is that practically, we can, although in one sense it's a little bit inconceivable, we can understand by the symptoms that if we look at the lives of those disciples of Srila Prabhupada who have dedicated their life to Srila Prabhupada and the circumstances under which they leave their body isn't. Of course, it's not that you have to leave your body at an astrologically auspicious time. It's not that a pure devotee has to necessarily, he isn't bound by these things. The main thing is the remembrance of Krishna at the time of death. But Krishna will also give a devotee these things if he so desires. Just like Bhishma, for example, he could have easily gone, he was a devotee of the Lord, it's Nitya Siddha. He didn't have to leave his body during the, Uttarayana period, the period when the sun is in the northern hemisphere. We read about in the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada, which is auspicious, is an auspicious time to leave your body. If you leave your body during that time, you go upwards. If you leave your body when the sun is in the southern hemisphere, you go downwards. Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita. But then Krishna says, but for a devotee, these things, they don't matter. But still, we see disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they leave their body. Krishna arranges such a beautiful situation for those devotees who have dedicated their life to the movement that we see often they're surrounded by devotees, devotees chanting the holy name of the Lord, either tapes of Srila Prabhupada chanting, leaving their body on a very auspicious day, just like one devotee who particularly rendered a lot of service to Srila Prabhupada, who I think about often, his philosophical understanding, he never lost faith in Srila Prabhupada, and you could say there are some faults in his character, and philosophically he got a little bit off near the end in some ways, but he rendered a great deal of service to Srila Prabhupada. He's like a whole heck of a lot of service during Srila Prabhupada, and he pioneered the movement in different areas of the world. And at the end, he left his body in Akshaya Tritiya, in the midst of Srila Prabhupada chanting japa, during the tape of Srila Prabhupada chanting japa. Incredibly auspicious circumstances. Now, I can't say for certain that he went back home, back to Godhead, because it's not like I have spiritual vision like that. But definitely, if somebody leaves their body at Akshaya Tritiya, and you're able to leave your body with Srila Prabhupada chanting japa into your ear, that is an unprecedented situation. Amongst so many others, we've heard, some of us have heard, different circumstances. To our misfortune, the grand disciples of Srila Prabhupada, to our misfortune, Srila Prabhupada's disciples are leaving the planet now gradually. And we hear news of people leaving, and sometimes, I just read something about how one Prabhupada disciple or another Prabhupada disciple left their body, and I was like, wow, it's incredibly awesome. The circumstances under which they left their body. There was one devotee I went to in Vrindavan. When I was in Vrindavan, this was before, I guess nobody here went to Vrindavan. Nobody here was on that party. They're all elsewhere right now. But I was in Vrindavan for a day. I went to the morning program. I was just like alone, basically. It was the first time I was in ISKCON Vrindavan, and I went to Mangalarti at Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi there. And there was one devotee, after the Mangalarti, there was one devotee in the back. And there's so many people there. The Vrindavan is like a crazy house. There's like Indians, and then there's like just disciples from all over devotees from all over the world, and there's like a slew of Prabhupada disciples there too. So there's this one devotee standing in the back who was like, he asked me something, and was like, when is Darshanarti, or like something like that. It's like, they're not doing Darshanarti, or it's like, I don't know, Prabhu. I just like got here, and then he was like elderly, I could tell. And so I was like, Prabhu, what's your name? I was like, my name is Shravanadi Prabhu. And he was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. I didn't talk to him so much. I didn't really know who he was, to be honest. I just knew he was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He went to Mangalarti there. And then when, 2 weeks later, I see, on Dandavats or somewhere, I forget exactly where, he left his body in Vrindavan. He had nobody knew this. He had some form of terminal cancer, and at the end of his life, he had just gone to Vrindavan actually, and just 2 weeks after I met him, he leaves his body in Vrindavan. It's amazing, Srila Prabhupada, my spiritual master, he quotes this, that Vrindavan is for inspiration, but our real work is all over the world. And for those disciples who do Srila Prabhupada's work all over the world, and they leave their bodies, Srila Prabhupada looks out for them, and he takes them personally back home, back to Godhead. Of course, it's not necessarily that you have to leave your body in Vrindavan. A devotee is not dependent upon that, necessarily. But it is a very good sign, amongst other things. The real thing is attaining the mercy of the spiritual master. So still, one may have doubt, how is it possible? I was saying that we can go back to home, back to God in his life. Srila Prabhupada, Adi Keshava Prabhu, disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he expressed this doubt to Srila Prabhupada, which Prabhupada resolved, and I'll end my class with this. Prabhupada said, you must be completely pure at the time of death. And that means you must have no other desire. So, Adi Keshava Prabhu, he asked, how is it possible? I know that I won't be remembering Krishna at the time of death. I know I won't be pure. So what will I do? And then Srila Prabhupada replied to him, you simply follow my instructions, and I will give you that remembrance at the time of death. So back to this basic point that everything comes to the mercy of the spiritual master. There's one quote that I'm working on this Muda mission now, which has like 8,000 quotes by Srila Prabhupada. But probably my favorite quote that at least that stood out to me so far is that, I'm paraphrasing it, but Srila Prabhupada said, we want us to get a certificate from the spiritual master that this person has done something for me. Then Krishna will recognize you. So if we get that certificate from the spiritual master, then our life is successful. So one other thing, I'm sorry, I'm bewildered. One other point, Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So I was mentioning his brothers, Venkat Bhatta's brothers. One was Venkat Bhatta, the other is Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur, and then the third was Tirumala Bhatta. So 3 Bhatta. They're all converted to Gaudiya Vaishnavism personally by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Yeah, so, okay, I'm short on time, so I can end my class there. If anybody has any questions about Gopal Bhatta Goswami or elsewhere, or corrections or comments or complaints, I can take them now. Anything? Yes.
So there's like a quote from Prabhupada that he was like, I guess having like a conversation with someone, one of his disciples, and he was explaining like how you don't have to be like, he says, if you follow pure devotee, then you are also pure devotee. It may not be
exactly,
pure, you know.
Yeah.
But because we're trying to raise ourselves from the conditional life, but if we strictly follow the pure devotee, then we're also pure. And so far we do that is pure. So it doesn't mean like how you said like Prabhupada disciples, like they just follow what he said.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to be like 100% like pure, but the fact, you know, like you said, the mercy comes and they get blessed. So I thought that was like pretty inspiring.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I was thinking about talking about this in another class, but since you mentioned that, I'll mention it here. So many people have like, well, a few devotees, we can say not many, maybe us all individually, I don't know. When we read Srila Prabhupada's book, sometimes there's a particular verse that stands out to us, or Krishna gives a realization on a particular verse. Krishna gave a special realization to Srila Prabhupada in the verse Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. Krishna gave a special realization to Bhagavati Prabhu, obviously, on this verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, that's by offering obeisances to the Lord's feet, etc. like that. So similarly, Ravindra Swarup Prabhu, there's a big history behind it, but there's a question at the time in the movement, how do you know who's a pure devotee? What does it mean to be a liberated soul? So there's a purport he read in the 4th canto. He was just reading randomly in the book. Actually, I think he just opened the Bhagavatam up, and it came to this. And this purport, it talks about that a liberated soul, I'm paraphrasing because I don't know exactly, but one who follows in the footsteps of a liberated soul, he himself is also liberated. Even though he may not be completely pure, but because he follows a liberated soul, he himself is as good as liberated. And as long as he maintains on that path, he's considered a liberated soul. So yeah, for those Prabhupada disciples who are following Srila Prabhupada, practically, we can say, if you examine, you may can find some fault in the character. You may can find some fault, but if they're following purely, they're liberated souls. We see that at the end. So yeah, that's very nice. Yeah.
So also like Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he also when he was with Lord Chaitanya, and like when he was, I guess, at his home, whatever.
Yeah.
He used to take his remnants every day.
Oh, really? Yeah. I thought to mention that, but I didn't know for sure. So yeah, you see the effect, you know? So, anything else for the men? Yes. 5 minutes.
What is this? You said From the Vyavasayamika Buddhi verse.
What is that? I'm sorry.
The Vyavasayamika Buddhi verse.
Vyavasayatmika
Special
buddhi
realization for Krishna.
ekere kuru nandrya bahushakatva nantascha.
Buddhi Vyavasayamika.
Yeah.
What you said that Prabhupada got like some special realization for Krishna.
Yeah, you can tell. Actually, Ravindra Swarup Prabhu, he writes a Vyas Puja offering, I think it's 2008, to this effect. He said that you can see a change in Srila Prabhupada's life when he read this verse. Because he had that instruction from his spiritual master, and like it was always there. But when he read this, and Srila Prabhupada, he said, there's a lecture given in 1968, I think on Pragya Keshava Goswami's disappearance day. I don't know for sure. It's somewhere around there, 1968. But Srila Prabhupada will mention again and again in his classes, conversations too, that he says when he read this verse, it struck him that the active principle in spiritual life is the order of the spiritual master. It's a basic point, we take it for granted, like we may understand, but it's just like sometimes, just like Chandanacharya Prabhu was saying yesterday, I think, when you read something, or like Kolki Prabhu, I forget, sometimes you read something, it's the same thing you've heard over and over again, but you read it, and it hits you in such a way that it's very emphatic, and you understand the import of that. So similarly too, it's quite, Srila Prabhupada himself, he says that happened when he read the commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on this verse, 241. That's, we have that somewhere, we used to have that, the paraphrasing, the orders of my spiritual master, my sadhana and sadhya, they're the means of my practice, and they're also the goal of my life. Whether the material universe continues on or is completely destroyed, it doesn't matter. The only thing in my life is just to adhere to the instructions of my spiritual master and carry those instructions out. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing very loosely. Of course, Prabhupada will also paraphrase. If you look at that comment on 241, Prabhupada's own commentary to Bhagavad Gita, you see he's quoting from Gurvashtakam. Oh yeah, I think maybe he's... Yeah, so here, I'll give you the translation of this commentary. The instructions of my spiritual master to worship the personality of Godhead by chanting, remembering, serving his feet, and so on are my only sadhana, my only sadhya. Sadhya means like goal. Sadhana means like means of practice, and sadhya means the goal, means like that's the only thing I care about in Krishna consciousness. My only livelihood. I am incapable of giving up these instructions either in the stage of practice or in the stage of perfection. They alone are my object of desire, my only responsibility. Besides them, I desire no other responsibility, not even in my dreams. It is all the same to me whether I feel happy or unhappy, or whether my material existence is eradicated or not. And we see practically, after he read this, Srila Prabhupada very seriously took up the order of his spiritual master. He dedicated himself to Vanaprastha life. He first in Jhansi initiated the League of Devotees. He was trying very, very hard to preach this message of Krishna consciousness, which ultimately fructified in him coming to the West. But that was a major turning point in Srila Prabhupada's life. It's very interesting. I can send you maybe that. It's a little long, that offering by Ravindra Swarup Prabhu. But yeah, he points this out. So yeah. Okay, anything else? Yes.
Just hearing from Maharaj, he's emphasized that Srila Prabhupada often just like made the point that the principle, like basis of everything that you're making that point too.
Yeah.
Like that, specifically the leaders to see out that is done first, that hearing, chanting, and reading. Specifically quoting from Satsarup Maharaj, he would say to Satsarup Maharaj, he's leading, and leader means leading in hearing and chanting.
Mm-hmm.
And like he would point out that Satsarup Maharaj wasn't such a great manager or whatever, but that the fact that he was like very good, articulate person,
Mm-hmm.
that he let him take that position as a leader. So it's like in some of the points you're making in hearing and chanting and all this seems like basis of foregs and practicing the principles of devotional service. Whatever service that we're doing, that's like the basis of it. Without that, it's like, it's like everything starts to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like an important point you're making throughout the whole class, yeah.
Yeah, it does. We've seen historically, there's so many, and not just historically, even within even devotees nowadays, same thing happens over and over again. So yeah, if you neglect, it's just the same thing. If you don't eat grains, your health is going to be like destroyed. You can do it for some time. You may even maintain your body like that, but it will wreck your health. So similarly too, if you don't practice If you don't adhere to the full thing, it's very dangerous for Krishna consciousness. So, okay. The Matajis have anything? Yes.
You were speaking and emphasizing a lot about devotees going back home, back to Godhead, and I just want to get a understanding. So when we say going back home, back to Godhead, do we mean going back home to Goloka Vrindavan, like Krishna Sambalabho, or if a devotee who's preaching, who's distributing Krishna consciousness, does it also mean going back home to Godhead, meaning that no matter where you go, as long as you're preaching and you're forever preaching, can that mean it too?
Well, it could technically be mean both. One devotee, he told Srila Prabhupada, I want to remain in the material world to distribute your books, or take another birth to distribute your books. And Srila Prabhupada said, no, don't make me come back. So there's that quote. Of course, we can also desire to be an eternal associate of the spiritual master. The spiritual master comes back. It's okay for the disciple to desire to come back with him and preach on his mission. So, I mean, it's, of course, those things are a little outside of my, so if you go with the spiritual master, are you in the spiritual world? It's, I guess technically, yes. It's kind of outside the realm of my understanding. Specifically, what it means you get the association of Krishna. Going back home, just like Srila Prabhupada, okay, he was in this material world, seemingly, but at the same time, he's not in this material world. So, a pure devotee, he can also be in the material world, but the main thing is that pure going back home, back to Godhead, if we're, of course, generally, there's the literal meaning, we go back home, back to Goloka Vrindavan. It can be so. It could be so. It could also be, it could also be a Vaikuntha planet for those who desire so, etc. like that. And, yeah, the spiritual master has his eternal associates too. That's a whole nother topic I won't discuss, but Srila Prabhupada told his disciples, that's Das Goswami, Brahmananda Prabhu, etc. like this, he told you that you've taken birth in this land, in America, to help me spread my mission. He told them you're all eternal associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, it could be so. Spiritual master, just as Krishna has his eternal associates, spiritual master also has his eternal associates like that. So, it could necessarily be so. Like that. We see in Gaura Lila, for instance, Gaura Lila was enacting in this world, just take one example, Arjuna. Arjuna is there in the spiritual world. At the same time, he was there as Ramananda Roy, simultaneously. So he's in the spiritual world, at the same time he's acting in the material world. So he's both. So it can be both like that. It's difficult to understand, but yeah. So that's kind of like a broad definition. Main thing is becoming liberated from material miseries and attaining full Krishna consciousness. That's the main thing. So, like that. Okay? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakapatugascha Kapasana Viva Shakti.